as an agenda for today, we have information on what is PhpStorm, what is Zend Server, information about how to use Zend Server for running your applications, and information on how to use Z-Ray, a special tool inside Zend Server, which is used for real-time inspection of a page you're running. And the last demo would be using Z-Ray with PhpStorm debugging and profiling capabilities. So probably you already know what is PhpStorm, but just to remind you, PhpStorm is an advanced IDE. It's an editor for your code for PHP and all the front-end languages. So it deeply understands your code. It provides completion, highlighting, intentions, inspections, all the refactorings and code quality analysis, code styles and formatting, zero configuration debugging, unit testing, profiling, and many, many other features. So I'm not going to be deeper in this topic, as I hope that you are already using PhpStorm, but if you're not, you can just go to jetbrains.com/PhpStorm and download a trial to start with. Most probably, Zend Server is a tool not really usual for the audience I'm speaking right now, because it's very enterprise-oriented, and it's very useful right now for development stage as well. So Zend Server in general is an integrated platform for web applications and some mobile application development, helping in all phases of the application lifecycle. And in recently released Zend Server 7, there has been added special support for developers, which is called Z-Ray. So Zend Server 7 includes Z-Ray, which gives unprecedented in-context visibility inside the application, showing in real time exactly what happens to construct each page you're running on the server. So it helps developers to write better code, so is PhpStorm. So that was the main reason we decided to collaborate between these two products, so that you can detect and fix all the issues with your code easier and earlier, and collaborate with operations staff to resolve productions problems faster. So as we see on this slide, the main value of Zend Server breaks down into the 4 categories shown here. That's development, developer operations automation, scalability, and enterprise PHP runtime. So we will mostly concentrate on the left upper column for development, as PhpStorm is integrated development environment, which is mostly used by developers, well, obviously not managers, but of course we will cover other parts of Zend Server as well, as they might be quite interesting for the entire stack of your applications you are using too. So what is Z-Ray? Z-Ray is a special bar which is integrated in your page when you are running it inside Zend Server. So Zend Server is actually an environment that's Apache, MySQL, PHP, and all the stuff running in one environment, and you deploy your applications there, and you run them there, and you get all the information with Z-Ray about what's going on with the application. So you can get vision of SQL queries, you get vision of PHP functions and super globals, you get PHP log, and even backtrace log, which gets you an opportunity to check in the history what was going wrong with your application, and also time and memory performance. But that would be actually quite bad to spend all the evening on the slides. So we'll be switching shortly to the actual demo to see how Zend Server is doing and how we can work with that. So here you see Zend Server, and it's generally working around applications. So I'm running developer edition of Zend Server, which is not our So I have a couple of applications deployed here. The first is WordPress, and the second is Magento. So let's start with Magento, for example. So yeah, I'm running Magenta page here, and as you can see on the bottom of the screen, there is this small bar which is called 0A, and that shows us information about what's going on in our application. So here we can see execution time, our PHP database, input-output, network, memory peak, and limits, and what kind of events we've got during their actually building this page. We also have some errors and warnings coming from PHP. We have some database queries which show what time it actually took to run this query to your MySQL or PostgreSQL, for example. And we have all the functions. So that's a kind of profiler you can use to investigate what was wrong with your code. We can see request info to check what are the values of the variables, and check headers and response, and all the rest, including some of their framework capabilities. For example, this one is working explicitly for Magenta, so providing some insight in Magenta-specific stuff which can be analyzed. But getting back from investigating only Zend Server, we will look right now at how PhpStorm works with Zend Server and what we can actually do with that. So there are two major points of integration between PhpStorm and Zend Server. So the first one is integration with Z-Ray and integration with Zend Debugger, which actually lies in the basement of Zend Server in terms of communication with IDEs. And Zend Debugger, using Z-Ray or other Zend Server features, provides us information to PhpStorm about debugging and profiling your applications. And there is also one more integration from the PhpStorm side, which is using command line tool, which is called ZDPack. And this tool is used in order to prepare packages to be deployed to Zend Server. So yeah, let's try to begin with debugging. And to begin with, probably you already know what is debugging. And in general, that's a process of exactly seeing what's going on during the execution of your code. So you don't need var dump. You don't need echo statements to get you all the information, all the values of the variables, and etc. etc. You don't need to do that manually. You can just use the debugger running on your local or remote environment in order to get insight into what's going on in your application. That's exactly the thing we are going to do. And debugging can be used both on local machine and remote machine. And actually, Zend Server can be installed locally or remotely as well, but we'll get back to that a bit later. Robert, can you please check that you muted your microphone, because it seems that we see some sounds. Hear some sounds here. Seems to be better now. Thank you. So here we have again a couple of applications deployed, and let's go to WordPress this time. So here I have Zend Server working on my local host. And I'm running WordPress instance here. That's just a simple WordPress 3.9.1, and it's been installed as a test application. So there are no specific things about this one. And I have the same WordPress installation open in my PhpStorm. So here we see the same WordPress 3.9.1. And what we want to do is to understand what's going on when we run the code on the Zend server with the help of Zend Debugger to get the insight and see in the code in our IDE what's going on. So the first thing we need to do is a bit of configuration from the PHP Storm side. The only one thing we need to do here is press this small button, which is called Start Listening for PHP Debug Connections. So I just enable that, and it turned green. That's the only one thing you need to do from their side of PHP Storm. And also you can actually check that there is a break at first line in PHP Storm script. In PHP scripts, option is active, is enabled in PHP Storm, so that it actually break on the first line when there is an incoming request. After that, we can go to the running instance of WordPress, which we're seeing right now. And in the right bottom, we see this bug icon, and there are two options: debug current page and profile current page. So let's begin from debugging. And we see that there is incoming connection from Zend debugger coming to our PHP Storm IDE. So this thing, that's a kind of a small configuration as well, which is very important, because when there is an incoming connection coming from the side of Zend Server, which can be actually a remote server or running on your machine or any kind of remote machine, and it has its own file system, which is not the same as the file system of your local computer or the file system of your project opened in the IDE. So here what PHP Storm is asking us is to map this incoming connection from Zend debugger and Zend server to the file we are going to debug. And this file, as we can see by the path coming from Zend debugger, is the path of index.php file. So we just select that it's index.php, and we accept the connection. And as we see, we got active debugging sessions right here, and we see all the information about variables, and the application actually, we could put a breakpoint here, but the application stopped on the first line because we explicitly said that enabling the option break first line in PHP scripts. So right now, when we stopped on some breakpoint or first line, we can go through our code. For example, we just can step into, go to the next one, go to the next line, and go through files, and we went to vpload.php, and we got to vpconfig.php, and we can go further and further through our code, exploring what's going on here, and we can actually define some specific watches if you would like to always see what's going on in this or that variable, so that we see the value all the time. So we can just define one for a new variable. For example, let it be vp did header, and we see that we turn true because that's really true. Moreover, we can set values during the execution if you would like to quickly check something. So, example, we can check table prefix to vp test, and on the next step, we see that it actually has been communicated to back to the debugger, and in your running environment, you now change the variable. You can also easily inspect in the editor all the variables, and you can go further and further, and you can step enter, you can step out, you can switch between breakpoints, and finally find something you find needs to be fixed in your code. So that's actually the process of debugging. Yeah, so I stopped the debugging, so that actually returned me some error, and I also changed the prefix for tables. So obviously we got an error in our database connection. So that was the debugging process, and that was going quite smooth. Though there are many debugging capabilities in PHP Storm which you may find really interesting. For example, we can set breakpoint in any line which you would like to stop your application at. Moreover, we can make conditional breakpoints. For example, if the variable, I don't know, test ID is equal to 1, it will be a condition so that it will stop on this line. So we can also log some messages to console. We can log related expressions and do many other things. And that's actually working for all like major debuggers. That's Xdebug and Zend debugger. But Zend Server is running Zend debugger explicitly by default, and that actually means that we don't need to install anything in addition to Zend Server, and that will be communicating with PHP Storm out of the box without any even tiny configuration from that side. So another workflow we can facilitate working with Zend Server and PHP Storm together is profiling. Profiling is getting a kind of stack trace of what was going on during their execution of the script, of the PHP script. And that's the reason we have the second option here, profile current page in Zend Server. So this one will actually pass all the information from the Zend server to PHP Storm so that we can easily explore what's going on. And very interesting point here I would like to get back to is mappings again. That were the incoming connections we've seen when we first initiated debugging for the first time, and we got incoming connection, and we needed to set the mapping for some specific file. And based on this mapping, our PHP server configuration has been created. So I went to settings, I went to PHP servers, and I see localhost, which has been created automatically on first invocation of the debugger, and we see that it actually connected to Zend server, the debugger, and it has some specific mapping which we configured for entire project, and that's very important to select the server here when we are doing profiling session as well, because in this case PHP Storm will know how to navigate from the state trace we've got from Zend server and Zend debugger via Z-Ray to actual pass in the local file system. So here we go with some calls which we have in content.php file, so we can explore what has been taken most time here. And we can check it backwards, and we can navigate between files, and we can find something which was slow, and afterwards, when we think that, for example, okay, this method has been slow, for example, we can jump to source right here so that we have insight on the code straight away. We don't need to find for this specific method. We can navigate here just from the profiler. And profiling capabilities of PHP Storm also include call tree. So we see how everything has been executed step by step. And we again see what was going on, and we can again jump to source or get a quick definition, which actually shows how this or that method is defined. And we can see quick documentation if it's defined. For example, in WordPress, it's defined by default. It's parsed from PHP docs, and we have instant access to information about our code we are running. So yeah, there are a couple of interesting things also in Zend server if you would like to explore. One of them is called events, and that's a list of different events or different problems in your code that have been spotted by Zend server, and they're shown in the list. You can configure your own events, and you can see all of them retrospectively. So you actually can run Zend server in the production and check which request has been slow, which functions have been slow, which pages have been slow, and all the rest. And as soon as you understand that something needs to be debugged, we can go here. For example, this request to VP cron took too much time. So what we want to do is begin debugging that in the IDE, and in a few seconds, we got this vpcron.php debugged in our IDE in PHP Storm, so that you see what was wrong with that, and you can go through that, and you can do profiling of this one as well from here, or you can go to not here, but to more detailed, more detailed information about event, and we see some information about what was going on here, and we can profile this event, and all these actions will get us back to the IDE, which is like really handy because you can debug and profile all your applications really fast. Okay, it seems that we are more or less done with the demo of the array work and Zend Server initiating debugging and profiling capabilities of PHP Storm. And I hope you, by this moment, understand that's like really handy and fast thing to do. First of all, because you don't need any kind of debugger configuration on the server side, it's always there. And secondly, because in general, debugging in PHP Storm is really smooth and powerful. But there is another thing I would like to talk today, and it's about deployments, preparing deployment packages for Zend Server, writing PHP Storm, and working with databases. So we will just switch to this demo as well. And one thing to mention is that for all this time I've been running Zend Server on my local host, but there is also opportunity to run it on Amazon Web Server, and in general, there are not many differences in those. Well, there are some differences in the payment options, because when you're running an Amazon instance, that might be really cheap for you for development, for example, because you're paying only for the time you're running the instance with the Zend Server. But one important thing is that when we initiate debugging or profiling, when our Zend Server is running on remote machine, not our local one, there is most probably a firewall between us and Zend Server, or instance running Zend Server. So in order to get communication between the IDE and between Zend Server, we need to set up an SSH tunnel. And how to set up those, I just show on my screen right now. That's a simple SSH command, and you just need to broadcast a remote host port 10,137 to a local host with the same port. And that's actually configurable in PHP Storm and Zend Server as well. And you need to provide an authentication file. So that's just one thing I missed talking about debugging and profiling, but that's quite an important one. So just wanted to get back to this one. And now let's get back to preparing PHP Storm deployment, PHP Storm command line tool to work with deployment packages in Zend Server. So Zend Server is coming with a special tool which is called ZDPack, and it's coming in a standard distribution of Zend Server when you install it locally. And in order to install this tool in PHP Storm, you need to go to Settings or Preferences and Command Line Tool Support, and install this tool as a custom tool. Project-wise or globally, that's just visibility, where it will be visible or for executing commands. And here I have it already installed, so I will not be doing that one more time. In fact, you just need to provide a tool path. This one is actually default path for macOS, and we need to give an alias, and we need to set the visibility. And after that, we will be able to edit special XML file. And XML file for ZDPack prepared by our team can be downloaded from our repository. And the link is on Confluence. That's our tutorial space. So you can easily find this XML file, and you need to put it here so that we get completion for all their commands. So how does it work? As soon as we created this ZDPack tool in our PHP Storm installation, we go to Tools, Run Command, or just use their hotkey for that. Our Mac hotkey is Command Shift X, and as soon as the tool is installed, we can easily complete all the commands which are coming with this tool by default. For example, the most basic thing is ZDPack create and application name, for example, webinar test. And this command will create a special directory where you will see a skeleton for new deployment package, which can be deployed afterwards to Zend Server. So here in this XML file, we can provide name of the application, description, version, licensing agreement, or some health check, scripts. We can also just make any scripts we want, or any kind of MySQL rollout, any kind of Vink, for example, for deployment or whatever, any kind of scripts. So you can just write those here and add them to deployment.xml file, and they will be run when you will be deploying this package on the Zend server. And also you can put here dependencies and requirements. So for example, here I have requirement PHP version not earlier than 5.3.15. I need PDO MySQL. I have some memory limit requirement and all the rest. So basically preparing Zend server deployment package is all about preparing this package and this folder. You need to put all the data here. You need to put all the information here. You need to put all the scripts, all the licenses, all the rest. And as soon as you are done with that, you are getting back to command line tool, which is already integrated, and you do ZDPack validate. That's a command to validate descriptor file, which is deployment XML, which we have opened in the editor. So we ZDPack validator webinar test deployment XML. You see everything is auto-completed, and the tool is using schema, which is coming with local Zend installation, and it says us that webinar test deployment XML is a valid descriptor file, which is a good thing, because now we are good to go with preparing this package to be deployed to Zend server. So the next command we are going to use is ZDPack, which will actually prepare the package we are going to deploy, and we are providing the directory we are going to pack. So soon we will get the package, and now we need to get back to the Zend server and check how our application can be actually deployed. So here we have deploy application, and what we need to do is actually select the package which we've just created. We see it in our file system as well. So we just select this one. It's uploaded to the server, and we are proceeding next. We need to provide the path for the package. Let it be test. It's going to run on our local host, which is Zone 1 server I have. But if you have like big development farm, it can be like cluster or whatever, and there might be different virtual hosts. And here we would put a license agreement, which we have to accept, and we are checking all the prerequisites we've specified before in our deployments XML file. and it seems that all the prerequisites are okay in my system. Next, we need to provide information about where we are going to run this application. We are going to run it in localhost, and database data is not really important for us this time because it's just skeleton application. And in fact, we are ready to deploy it. So Zend Server is deploying the application right now. And it needs just a few seconds to do that. Of course, if there would be many scripts for deployment and rolling out databases, that might take a bit longer, but in any way, that's quite a smooth operation. And you see, we've got this skeleton we've just created in PhpStorm, deployed to Zend Server, and it's running on Zend Server straight away. So we have, again, all the information provided in the Z-Ray. And in fact, if you are building some kind of framework, custom built framework, you can even provide special plugins for Z-Ray and all the rest. So the thing is quite powerful. So I've been talking about debugging, profiling, and deployment so far. And one more demo I would like to show you is related to database or working with database in your applications. So Zend Server is coming with MySQL by default, or of course you can install other databases, but yeah, MySQL by default is quite okay. So what we would like to do is, for example, using Zend Server as our development server, we would like to connect to the database to check what's going on with data and to probably create immigration schemes from our development to production server, so that it's much easier for us to deploy our applications. So here I have MySQL at localhost default port configured. That's the default one coming with Zend Server, so I didn't have any kind of configurations. And you can select schema, you can select some settings, but that's not that important for now. We have a connection to the Zend Server, and we have all the databases here. We have all the data, and we can run queries. We can compare two tables, for example. Well, those are quite different because, of course, we are actually making a div between two tables in the only one database. But I believe you've got an idea. So if you have a few databases, for example, one on development instance and one on production instance, you can create a div between them, and you can actually create your migration schema out of the PHP Storm, so that you put it in the rollout script for your migration, and that would be quite easy to move to a new production server. And one more thing with databases, I'll just query index PHP, which is, well, I guess okay. When we are doing a lot of queries in our code, and when we are working like this, we would be really happy to get information from the database while it's connected to the IDE. And in order to do that, we need to inject language and reference in SQL query we are writing in our editor, and here we get completion and information for everything what's connected in our what's existing in our database. So I have WordPress database here connected, and it's running directly on Zend Server, and in PHP Storm I can complete all the statements. I can get an insight on what's going on when it was created, and all the data, and what's the definition of the table, or definition of the field in the table. So that's like something I really wanted to show you about our database integration, so that it works smoothly with Zend Server, and there are no problems in using those. That was mostly about demos, and I will switch to how to get started. So in order to get started with PHP Storm, you just get a 30-day trial available with no limitations in features you can use. And you can download it and install from jetbrains.com/phpstorm download and use it. And no special plugins are needed to work with Zend Server. And Zend Server is coming with 30-day trial as well. And you can either download and install Zend Server from Zend.com or just go to Amazon Web Services Marketplace and create an instance there. And for the first month, you will not get charged for usage of Zend Server, though you might be charged for usage of Amazon Web Services. And if you're a first-time runner of Amazon instance, then you get it for some time for free as well. So that's quite a good thing to try. Personally, I really tried both versions, and they work pretty smoothly without any significant changes with PHP Storm. So just choose the way which is more convenient for you. And talking about some other resources, you should definitely check out PHP Storm if you haven't done that, and Zend Server websites. And we have tutorials from both sides. From JetBrains side, that's using PHP Storm with Zend Server. It contains all the information on how to configure PHP Storm, on what's actually needed to be done to debug, and how to debug your applications, and how to use different tools with PHP Storm and Zend Server. Because in fact, there are some additional tools which can be used. For example, you can run PHP unit on Zend Server, and you can use a remote interpreter or running on Zend Server, but that's like quite an off topic for today, I believe. And from the Zend side, there is also information in Zend Server help directory, so you can get information from the Zend side as well. And if you would like to learn more about PHP Storm, again, check the website. You can send feedback on this webinar to my Twitter, that's Mikhail_Vink, or PHP Storm Twitter. The recording of the webinar is going to be available at youtube.com/JetBrainsTV. And make sure to follow PHP Storm in Twitter and on the blog so that we can deliver all the latest information about product to you. And on that, I would actually stop my presentation and pass the microphone to Robert, who is definitely having some questions from you guys and girls. So I hope you love this small demo today.
Hi, Mikhail. We do have a couple questions. I've been able to answer most of them, but there's a couple outstanding. Does PHP Storm work with Zend Server running at IBMI?
Yes. Actually, there might be some glitches about this one, but we've been communicating with Zend, and we got a confirmation that it's running pretty well because there are no specific Zend Server really architecture changes running on different platforms. So the features of Zend Server are the same on our normal usual platform and IBMI, so there shouldn't be any problems. But if you experience some of them, you can contact us. There might be some specific configurations for IBMI, and we'll be glad to investigate if you have some problems with that. And just to note, today we've been running Zend Server 8 beta, and PHP Storm is working with Z-Ray on Zend Server 7, 8, and it's working on the events page for even Zend Server 6. So yeah, both on IBMI and other platforms.
Okay, next question. Is there any specific configuration needed if I run Zend Server on Amazon?
Yeah, as I mentioned, there is one significant difference in those two workflows, running locally and running on Amazon Web Services instance. So the major difference is that there is most probably a firewall between you and Amazon instance, and you can't connect directly from the IDE to the remote server running on Amazon, or even if you run your own remote server. So you need to create a tunnel. This is a simple SSH tunnel, and what you need to do is to broadcast some specific port, which is 10,137, which can be, by the way, configured in both PHP. Let me show it to you. Yeah, so it can be configured in PHP Storm, in settings preferences, PHP debug, or Zend debugger debug port, and it can be also, of course, configured in Zend Server. And let me find this setting. Yeah, so if we disable automatic detection of IDE settings, we can provide IDE debug port here as well. So what you need to do again is to make an SSH tunnel. Make sure that you have what I here have for zs.pem. That's a certificate provided by Amazon Web Services. That's an authentication certificate you need to use in order to SSH to your remote machine. So that's pretty it. You just need a tunnel, and that will work in the same way as it works for local installations.
Okay, thank you. So the next two kind of go hand in hand. Somebody asked, you mentioned this earlier, but maybe go over it again. Are there other means to debug PHP applications? Is Zend Server the only one supported by PHP Storm? I know you gave the answer to that, but maybe you can tell us again, and that'll lead into the next question.
Yeah, sure. No, Zend Server and Zend Debugger running on Zend Server is definitely not the only one, or not the only one option to debug applications. Basically, I would even say that Xdebug, which is open source debugging and profiling tool created by Derek Rathans, which is really popular in PHP community. So Xdebug seems to be a bit more popular because Zend Debugger is mostly used inside Zend Server. That's more enterprise-oriented tool. Of course, some developers use it as well, and that would be good if more and more developers use that. That's like good tool. And Xdebug needs a bit of configuration. So in order to use Xdebug, you need to install it into your PHP environment you run. For example, if it's MAMP on Mac, or if it's like simple LAMP or stack you're running and configuring on your own, you need to edit php.ini and add their information that you are running Xdebug. Though if you're not running Zend Server and would like to use Zend Debugger, you need to do the same for Zend Debugger. So that's not much difference. But with both debuggers, PHP Storm get pretty the same information. It gets all the debugging information, all the profile information, and shows it in the same UI. So you can choose what to use, Xdebug or Zend Debugger, depending on your workflow, environment, and personal preferences.
Okay, so which are the features we have seen that only work with Zend Server 8, which won't be available using Xdebug, and say deployments over SSH SCP?
Well, actually, entire part about deployments have been specifically about Zend Server. If I understood the question right, so the deployments have been Zend Server specific, but all the debugging capabilities. The point of Zend Server in this debugging workflow is that we are initiating the process of debugging from the Zend Server side. Otherwise, there is no big difference. We could use it with special bookmarklets. So how debugging works, for example, IDE is waiting for connections, and browser or anything else need to send information to invoke a connection between IDE and browser, and debugger running on the server, but browser is a kind of middle agent which is actually telling the debugger need to be communicating with the IDE. So usually, in order to communicate, for example, Xdebug to PhpStorm, we need a special extension for Chrome, for example. I can show you this one, extensions. So yeah, there's, for example, Xdebug helper, which when active, but it will not work on this one. But when okay, now it should work. Yeah, so when active, this extension will provide us these three buttons: debug, profile, and trace. And in fact, these buttons are pretty the same as button in the Zend Server and Z-Ray. So that's pretty the same. And talking about Zend Server 8 in specific, there is one specific feature which is not available in Zend Server 7, but it's more like for debugging your APIs and mobile applications, and that's getting information about incoming connections which are not actually invoked by a normal browser page. So, for example, from PhpStorm, I can start testing of some RESTful server. For example, in this case, I'll just send a GET request to Magenta running on Zend Server with some parameters, and we will see this request here. Yeah, so we see this request. So, for example, this feature hasn't been in Zend Server 7, but it's not that much about debugging. That's more about investigating your connections. But yeah, still quite interesting to look at while Zend Server 8 is coming.
Okay.
Any more questions?
No, Mikhail, I think that's it. Unless anything comes in the next few seconds, I think that answered everything. The rest we can follow up with via email. So thank you, Mikhail, for your presentation.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, anyone, for joining us today, and see more screencasts and webinars at our YouTube channel, and that we will try to publish the recording in a couple of days or possibly even this week. Thank you.